Hi again, everyone. I'm Ollie Matthews. This is Societal Narcissism, and this video is sponsored by contribution from Sunshine. And Sunshine wrote in before where I did the video when the narcissistic baby boomer can't gaslight you. And here's her story. Hello, Ollie. Happy to say we just moved states. It's a fresh start in life and closer to some of my husband's family, in an area of the country I hope to be in growing up. Friendly people, cool weather, small town. Spending time with protective, hardworking men puts things into perspective. The first video helped a lot, even though I shared so little, especially because of the laughs. I damn near passed out at Corvette whore. Yeah, she was. Yeah, my mother was a Corvette whore. Your mockery towards my dad got a good laugh from both of us. I was hoping you'd get a laugh out of their story. That helps me a lot to share more. Many of my experiences were clownish and deserve to be laughed at. This will probably be the full range of funny, absurd, and infuriating. It's been a free flow of what's on my mind. Thanks in advance. I think I've struggled to send stories because the elephant in the room has been my dad. I can't hold back anything if I'm going to speak up. Many people see my mom's nuts. Dad hides behind her crazy and gets victim status from it. As does my father, hides behind her fucking overt fucking crazy. But when you stop and you take a step back and you analyze what's going on, you realize he's puppeteering the entire thing, making themselves out to be these great guys who are they put up with so much from their crazy wives. It's bullshit. Thanks in advance. I think I've struggled. Wait, I'm sorry. It's time to spill my guts on the topic and figure it out. For background, Dad started a small business in the mid-'80s with a partner who held a 51% stake. They sold in 2019 to a large competitor. The business was my parents' excuse for why he was hardly ever around, despite being 10 minutes away. Work, Little League, and golf, which my brother was in, were the main excuses. I got into retail at 18, which is a whole narc story by itself. And I've talked about retail just being a narcissistic swamp. It always is. After I left that job, a full-time office employee put in 2 weeks' notice. I had done some part-time work for the company, so it naturally followed that I interviewed. I did not answer to my dad. Oh, okay, so you're working at your dad's office. I got you. I did not answer to my dad. My boss was the office manager. Dad was mostly in the shop, killing time, working on the fleet, or in his office. Work was a big BS excuse for not being in our lives. None of my siblings worked there, so they didn't get to know him outside the home. He's very much a different man. Seeing this was mind-blowing, but it validated my suspicions growing up. His business partner had 2 sons and some other family hired that didn't work out. My siblings wanted a job. They had a shot, which is important to note in my brother's case. Basically, our family didn't hire a bunch on nepotism compared to the other owner. Mom did graphic design for the company back in the 90s and rebuilt their website later. I worked full-time with those women for 3 to 5 years as I started to leave due to the buyout. They worked with my dad anywhere from 15 to 30 years. Thankfully, I've had multiple heart-to-heart talks with the office women after no contact. One of them validated that my dad bullies women but backs down with men. While rare, it was still a problem as the office manager was a woman. She later became a confidant and a role model for me. When Dad got in a rut going at her, his business partner would have to address it, then he'd stop. She was a parentified middle child herself. her daughter got caught up with a psychopathic narc for a few years. It makes sense to her now why I was able to help her figure out what was up with that dude and how to see her daughter through the breakup and recovery process, which took years. My husband and father-in-law called the same shot early on and were exactly right. He really is a coward. It's been years since I've seen the extreme side, but it puts my memories into a new perspective. It only took two men to hold him to his words to make him frantic. To him, that is a direct threat. He lied to my husband and father-in-law so much. He got called out and cursed out for it. Dad had nothing to say meeting my father-in-law in person. Dad only had balls over the phone to slander the man's son and wife. Sounds a lot like my father. Big man around women, but face to face with men, he'd either lie or he would try to avoid conflict. Unless it was down in Little League, then he would make a complete fucking asshole out of himself. In front of groups and other people, he had a lot of balls when there were other people around. One-on-one, the guy's a pussy. Always has been. I mean, he could bully little kids. Unless he's bullying women or little kids in front of a group, he's a complete pussy. Dad is used to winning by default of being bigger, taking his temper out on us girls till we feel the threat of physical violence. Often growing up, he would declare a threat, but rarely follow through. I used to give my dad a lot of slack, started tightening that up in my teens, and realized since COVID how insanely bad he was with enabling my mom. She's anti-jab to the max. Conspiracy theories now define her whole life and personality. Despite us agreeing with her on the injections, she drove the whole family insane. My older sister would literally receive 50 to 100 texts while at work, mostly related to the topic. Her boss took a look and informed my sister this was insane behavior. I had to bar her from speaking to me on certain topics, telling her, when the room is clean, we can talk about it. That time frame is a story on its own. I guess I'm still letting go of the drive to protect my family reputation. You gotta let that go. You gotta let that go. Because your family reputation isn't what you think it is. It never is. The reality is much different than the fantasy of it that you've built up in your head. There's a sense of shame that comes with being abused. Exposing the abuse felt like exposing my own shame for much of the life, but there's a freedom. Once you do it, and once it gets out there, and you get that validation, the shame is gone. The shame is completely gone, because you got to replace your shame of abuse with the validation that your abuse was real. Shame for what? Allowing it to happen? I was born into the thick of it. It was never my responsibility. Fortunately, my mom shattered their reputation with the office women when I moved out. So it's not my problem anymore. It never was, and I need to accept that. I think the failed smear campaign by both my mother and little sister caused them to clam up for now. After slamming some former co-workers with the smear campaign, those women reached out to a fellow manager at my next job, who was also my safe haven for a week while we secured our apartment and my parents pulled a stunt. She assured them I was with a nice young man, that I was safe, and that their team supported us as a couple. I was fortunate to speak with my old boss before moving. Things added up for her with what I experienced on the personal side. The women I worked with are some of the best personally and professionally. So I'm exceptionally fortunate that I had folks in my corner who cared about me in my time of crisis. You know what that tells me? Because you put a couple women in an office, rarely do they all get along with each other. Unless there is a centralized bad guy, and that's probably your father. That's probably your father, because your father was probably so horrendous at work They didn't have time to go after each other because he's such a fucking prick. To your point exactly, we're not repeating the cycle. I've had that conversation with my husband several times. We had a chance to break the cycle. It's not going to be easy, but it takes less energy than being a borderline boomer bitch. I have so much joy and energy being away from my parents. I used to express that fear that someday I will turn into my mother, but that's not possible with the man I married. He's way too good to allow that. Unfortunately, my little sister appears to be following more of my mother's path. Her fiancé has been described by my older sister's friends as the most whipped man they've ever seen. He did nothing as our parents used withholding an answer on their wedding budget to delay their wedding. They wanted to be married last spring on the 1-year anniversary of their engagement. They still don't have a venue booked yet, and the maid of honor is expecting next spring. So that's probably out of the question too. So the maid of honor to your sister's wedding is not you or one of your sisters? That says a lot about her. Boy, does she... Wow. Okay. My husband met him once and observed he sets no boundaries and does not assert himself. I thought his third-party presence would help mitigate my mom's harassment. Nope, he comes from a boomer hoarder household and never put his foot down with his own mom. His father was killed in an altercation with the police before they were old enough to remember him, so they grew up in a single-mother household. Mom still controlled both brothers in a lot of ways. You know what that means, though? That means your sister reminds him of his mother. It means your sister is just a younger version of his mother, because he's a son husband, and he's looking for a son husband wife that is just a younger version of his mother. For a few months before no contact and our wedding, us 3 sisters lived in our childhood home after my parents and brother, who recently turned 30, finally moved into the house Mom inherited with our financial help, primarily my help. Despite her recent denial of ever taking the money, I had records pulled. The original she had withheld and shredded. She claimed you only have to keep December statements at the end of each year, but she also kept all of them for safekeeping because we couldn't be trusted not to lose them. I was a teen when this started, but I recalled everything perfectly from what she said. Thankfully, the stipulation was we could be paid back when the business was sold. We were squared up on that, except for the fact that they agreed us sisters would stay in the childhood home in exchange for the loans, so we could save up. So they could have 2 pieces of property. A debt they will now always owe in the arrangement. At this point, it's between them and God. The financial abuse would stand as an email on its own. It started when I was 19 and she withdrew 10 grand even in cash from my savings, claiming she needed it to pay taxes and didn't have the money to pay me back in over 3 years. In reality, I believe she was using it to pad their retirement and get a better tax refund as a result, or to cover a few months' worth of expenses with cash, for draining her own account for the same purpose. Either she never needed the money, she just didn't want to pull it from her own assets, which were making her money, to pull this off. So the boomer literally stole from my financial future instead to protect her established interests. Looking back, it's not a surprise. And understand, everything you own belongs to the boomer in their mind. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's bank accounts, possessions, cars, your home. It's all theirs. The boomer is entitled to whatever you own. That's what they think. Since I ditched the house, little sister's fiance is now living in the same house, same home as both sisters. They paid our parents nothing in rent or utilities for several months now. I was the only one financially willing and capable of doing that. I would have covered everything to secure the home for us 3. The whole family knew that. Thankfully, for the sake of my older sister, who did not backstab me, my little sister knows how not to get bit and refuses to agree to anything until a solid number is put in writing. And that's never going to happen. Naturally, Mom wants cash only and keeps changing numbers. I told my older sister to do anything but cash. Mom is a liar. She has claimed before that she's not been paid back when she has, for things like car repairs and cell phone bills for my siblings. I once went 4 months without paying car insurance and cell phone just to see if she'd notice. She didn't until she needed some cash on hand. I have no doubt in my mind the standard of what we owe her for what was not equally enforced. She never answered me when I asked when the last time was that my brother squared up. Our mom is disorganized, greedy, and gives the son husband a free ride. No surprise. I'm sure your brother's getting a lot of that money too. See, they love dealing in cash. Boom, they love dealing in cash because they hide it. My mother would hide cash everywhere. My mother had stacks of cash hidden everywhere in that house. Mom still barges into the house multiple times a week, using the chickens and the lawn as an excuse. Before that, it was also the dogs, but she ended up taking them. Now she's up to 5 dogs. So she had you guys taking care of her dogs as well. Despite little sister and fiance working remotely, apparently they couldn't manage all that. Just kidding. They wanted a Labrador instead. So the other dogs and chickens can be damned. Today I found out Mom is taken to snatching my mail from the house when she can. My older sister was keeping it for me as I continued to change my address on everything. She got a hold of it when she was gone at work. Just change your address. Stop having anything sent there. If you have to get a temporary P.O. box, do that. My older sister stays out of the house as much as possible. It's miserable there for them. You bet Mom still butts her nose into the laundry, trash, and domestic duties while she's there. No one is allowed to have their own life, privacy, or boundaries. Without me, there is no one to take or mitigate the abuse but them. They did choose this. If I write about the meltdown that resulted in no contact, I better explain the role my little sister and her fiance played. In trying to kick me out, my parents retroactively declared husbands were not included in the living arrangement. They had to say husbands because we already said we would not move in while engaged. That's not appropriate. We'd be working towards a new living situation anyways long term. Not soon enough for my little sister. I guess they really had convinced themselves that I was either a lesbian or such a basket case no man would ever marry me, because they acted like it was the most outlandish thing in the world that I was dating and then got engaged. They chose to give me the cold shoulder for much of this time frame and busted in the screeching. They don't know him well enough. I had also made it clear to my little sister that her fiance was more than welcome to move in after they were married. I had no problems with that. We were all starting out in a very expensive state, and I was the only one with a viable career. I had no problem with them. They had problems with me, primarily because both my mother and little sister want control of the house. My little sister would have probably tried to get me kicked out regardless. My husband is confident of that as well, because your little sister is the one who's taken after your mother the most. It's important to emphasize Christian principles for my family story because my parents claim to be Christian. Oh God. And they claim we are a Christian family, not regular church going or Bible reading, praying, or in making any effort to be Christ-like at all, really. So basically, we're not practicing Christians, which is a joke. It's funny, during one of my mom's outbursts when she claimed getting engaged was wrong because we don't know about them, they failed to engage in any conversations or ask questions to me or him about the relationship. Apparently, I was supposed to volunteer boatloads of information when they were deliberately ignoring us the whole time we were dating. Even when they assumed he had already proposed. Didn't matter. They already made up their minds he is the devil. Because they saw him as a threat. They saw him as a threat to their control and their whole little fucking scam, their whole little boomer scam they've had running. Okay, using the resources of their children, using their children's names, using their children's possessions for their own benefit. Anything you own belongs to the boomer. Anything you own, whether it be your bank accounts, your cars, your homes, it doesn't matter. They're entitled to all of it. And God help you if you fucking deny them. I asked, what does she want to know? In a string of facts I mentioned, they're a Christian family, and she blurted out, oh, so they're Christian. I responded, you didn't figure that out? All of them have blatantly biblical names. Would Moses or Noah have been on the nose enough for you? Without specifying, my husband's name is as obvious as Moses or Noah in terms of being from the Bible. Yeah, my parents are so far removed from Christianity and so self-deluded about him being evil. A blatant biblical first and middle name for each of their 4 kids didn't ring a bell that, hey, that sounds like they might believe in the Bible. You are spot on about the phrase living in sin. I grew up knowing this phrase. Suddenly, it's husbands no, but boyfriend and fiance yes. My mom told us as children she would support us if we moved in with a man before marriage. The reason why she didn't want you getting married, because once you're married, that's legal. Now it's 50-50 in everything. It's 50-50 in all assets, in all possessions, in all finances. It's 50-50. Your parents, as I said, the boomer, who thinks they are entitled to all your possessions and finances, sees them as another cut of the fucking pie that they're not getting. So they would rather you, quote unquote, live in sin, because at that point, he's not entitled to anything. This is all about money with your parents. This is all about them using you and your sisters for every fucking dime that they can scam out of you. That's why they're not helping out with your other sister's wedding. They don't want to split the pie anymore, because once you're married, it's now all assets are legally binding. That's what's going on here. It's all about the money. It's all about the money. By the standard my parents raised us in, my dad has made a whore of my little sister for years, especially in delaying their wedding. Well, he'd rather her be a whore than have to share money. That's not his anyway, that he feels entitled to. She used to live in her fiance's room at his mother's house for days on end, going back years. And now they live in sin, paid for by him. But God's will is really the boomer's will. As Dad said several times, I'm changing the deal, which they think they can do at any time. This leads into what frustrates me most about my dad. Maybe it's just a Gen Z thing to overtly use this insult, but I think Dad's a cuck. Probably in some way. Not the typical wants other men to have his wife cuck. My father has expressed in front of my older sister and some family and friends he has nothing nice to say about his wife. Given how she looks and acts in public, it's unlikely another man would actually have her. Besides, she'd rather get off by proxy of her then teenage daughters getting attention from grown men. She's notorious for flirting with little sister's fiance since he was about 16, and he's not her type. My husband is, though. I had to warn him about it. And yeah, there's some weird interactions with that, but some other things that are just so wildly off. I think I need to get them off my chest and hear some feedback to understand what I'm looking at. First, the classic son husband. He's allowed mom a high level of enmeshment and emotional incest with my older brother. Beyond emotion, she serves my brother like a woman would serve a husband. I see him as a cup for that, and it always frustrated me. Over a decade of my brother's adult life and teens, she has cooked, cleaned, and supported and made infinite excuses defending him. Despite his temper, entitlement, and tantrums when assigned chores, and the fact that he quite literally spent half of his adult life unemployed playing Fortnite, among other video games. Meanwhile, Dad lived in a complete hoarder bedroom, made his own breakfast, lunch, and often leftovers for dinner. When she did cook meals, it was catered to my brother's palate. Pepper is too spicy for that dude. He complained about the crust on homemade sourdough being too thick. If mom ever tried something new and he was the only one who didn't like it, she never made it again. Granted, acts of service by themselves aren't necessarily the problem. It's the reality that her husband is deliberately denied what she freely gives to her son. Well, I think your father actually wants that because he gets two things: less attention from her, which I think he wants, and he gets to play the victim. The boomer loves playing the fucking victim, just like my father loved playing the victim. Of course, anything she did for her daughters made her a martyr. But if your son gets husband treatment while you get the doghouse, I think that's being cucked by your own wife with your son. I've heard my dad effectively disown him as well. He's her son, not his. He takes no responsibility for the state his son is in. The second reason is mom openly joked with us children that he only gets any once a month. Ugh. Oh, the boomer degenerate. Always got to make it sexual, don't they? With their children. The boomer loves discussing their sex life with their children. They can't help it. We were still in car seats when we started hearing that crap. So basically, the only husband benefit he's had for 2 decades is sex once a month. I think he's a cuck for that, and my mother's a sick bitch for telling her children about her sex life at all, especially for humiliating her husband in front of their children. This just reminded me, between the age of about 9 and 12, I noticed a pattern where after about 3 weeks, my dad would get exceptionally temperamental. So I would tell mom, the month must be coming up. Could you just have sex with him so he'll calm down? It's so sick that dad is so emotionally out of control. Us kids got caught up in the monthly cycle of their sex life. Oh my God. Oh my God. Parenting your parents, being their fucking psychologists, like they're dragging you in to their sex lives, and they love it. They love it. The third one is more recent. My parents have a roommate at the inherited house. He's a friend of my father's, and they do side work. He lived in the home during the renovation as well, which took years. Post-reno, he still pays no rent. My mother started describing him as my dad's girlfriend before joking he's the other wife, and now commonly calls him my husband's second wife. She said this to us kids, neighbors, and strangers that I've personally seen. Can't imagine how often she said this overall if I've had to hear it about a half dozen times. I would ask here, okay, because your father seems like the type, okay, with the condition of his marriage, how he lives, the hoarding, that he could be on the fucking down low. He might actually be his girlfriend. They might be boyfriend and boyfriend on the down low. Wouldn't surprise me. Maybe it's just a Gen Z thing to use cuck more often as an insult, but being a husband and father, if your wife is running around to friends, people you work with, your kids, and complete strangers, describing your living situation as my husband, myself, my son, and my husband's second wife, male name. You're a cuck for tolerating that sexual slander. You are, unless you're building some kind of pity supply off of it. Unless other people, okay, who didn't work with your father, are looking at it like, oh, this poor guy. Oh, this poor guy. And then again, your father might not even understand how he was perceived at work. He might think they all loved him. They all think he was a great guy. Because they're that delusional. They build up that type of delusion in their head. Then if they meet the roommate, they see he hardly has any teeth. Ugh. How are people supposed to take that statement other than they're gay? Could be, and it could be. It could be. Don't just throw that out that could be a possibility. It would explain a whole hell of a lot of especially his hostility towards women and why he backs down to men. He sounds like he's a borderline male on the down low. I've done plenty of videos about them. Sounds like your dad is a borderline boomer male on the down low. He checks all the boxes here. I've explained to a few people how my mother describes their living situation. They're shocked at her. Given how many times I've seen her say it to other people, I can't imagine how many people she's told all this time. It's reframed how I think of my dad. At this point, I hate to think there's something to it, and I doubt it as well, but it's common for narcs to be deviant, so that sucks. I know it sucks, but it is a definite possibility. It really is. Before no contact, my mother accused me of not having enough respect for her, which is wrong. Why would I have any? No, it's not that I don't have enough respect for you. I don't have any respect for you. Why would you respect her whatsoever? Why would you? Which is wrong. I have the correct amount of respect for her. Okay. She directly said she was upset that I had more respect for Dad, which was no longer true at the time. My dad is not exclusively a pushover, though. He's very capable of being Mom's attack dog towards his daughters, especially me as the scapegoat trying to manage my mother's insane actions. Something Dad couldn't be bothered to do, as my husband puts it, based on what he's seen in himself and heard from my experience. He waits until the worst possible moment to barge in on conflict that he lets build up in the home to cause the most emotional damage and chaos possible. He's calculated and consistent and could clearly stop your mom at any time. He's a grown man. He has no excuse for allowing that to happen in his home. I guess I'm struggling to reconcile all the different sides to my dad's dysfunction. My dad has played a huge role in clarifying things, both current and past, as I told him in my life. Prior to no contact, he refused to let my parents lie to me, to him, to his father, and he called them out more than once because they just couldn't stop lying, which is why they don't like him. That, and they don't like you now being 50-50 with him in all assets. I'm blessed that we have enough in common growing up to understand each other, and he has enough discernment that gaslighting doesn't work on him. After fully seeing my scenario and meeting my parents, he told me what my parents had put me through was beyond what he thought was possible. He grew up in a military family, three boys, one youngest girl. During one of his dad's deployments, his mother had a mental breakdown that heavily altered her personality and parenting, and he's seen her recovering since. There were a few times the satellite phone got passed around to call home because his dad didn't know if they were going to make it out. They had a very hard life, but they always had love in his family. Things did get better, and as adults, we all have a great relationship. His parents are Gen X, so his grandparents are boomers. On my husband's side, the boomer grandparents abused their family severely. His father's story is similar to my experience, including labor and financial abuse, and the whole family being discarded, in his case as a child. He spent a few decades as an adult trying to keep the family together before cutting contact. We've had multiple cathartic conversations about boomer dysfunction because we were both raised by it. We understand and we're healing. The boomer grandparents are among the oldest boomers, while my parents are among the youngest and had late pregnancies. So I see my parents' future in this family. Out of 5 kids and 11 grandkids, the boomer grandfather has a relationship with only 1 child and 1 grandchild, both from his current marriage, and you can hardly count a 2-year-old that literally can't leave. Opposite to my mom, my husband's mother has been the gold standard for a mother-in-law. She shows the grace and love and acceptance that is in my mind and is what I want when in that position. The first weekend I spent with them was welcoming and shocking how close they are as a family and how much love their marriage has. She told us despite their hesitance in the beginning, she expected no less of her son than to find a woman like me. Saying that I am beautiful, intelligent, that he met his match, and she's relieved she doesn't have to worry about her son. He got married like he wanted, found an awesome woman like she knew he would. He's taken care of, and so am I. She has no doubts about that. We have healthy boundaries, and I call his parents often because we enjoy talking. It was honestly dumbfounding for me to hear how she could compliment us both. My mother quite literally cannot do that for me. We're so happy that we can maintain a relationship with his family. I fit in so perfectly with his parents and siblings. It's wild. Listen, and I know it's a shock. I know it's a culture shock for you, as it is for most of us who have been abused like this. And again, I'm going to tell the story of my Aunt Barbara, and I've told this several times. My Aunt Barbara, my mother's sister. My mother was the oldest. Barbara was the middle child. Ginny was the baby. Okay. Virginia, my narcissistic grandmother, the borderline nuts. The whole household was just nuts. Screaming, yelling, fighting, shotguns pulled, like the whole 9. Okay? And Barbara told the story where when she met one of her longtime boyfriends, George's family, for the first time, and I think they were at maybe a holiday or a birthday. It was some kind of big family gathering, and they're at the dinner table, and somebody knocked the glass over. And she got, her immediate response was to freeze. And everybody just laughed, and they just cleaned it up and moved on. And she was waiting. She was all freaked out because she's waiting for the freak out, for the absolute histrionic, narcissistic, all-out, knockdown, drag-out fight that never happened. Because spilling a drink in their house or my house, okay, you might as well have burned the house to the ground. It was the same reaction. And that's when she realized, she always knew how fucked up the family was, but that's when she said it really sunk in. Oh, this is how normal people act. Somebody knocks a glass, spills a drink. It's not the end of the world. You laugh it off, you clean it up, you move on. No harm, no foul. No, not in that household. Not in my household. Not in most of our household. You knock a drink over, you might as well have raped the family dog on the dinner table in front of grandma and then set fire to the house. Same reaction. No different. Reaction would be no different. Despite the extreme stress and their own history of family dysfunction, there is so much love in this family. They are close despite being split between 2 different states, and his parents were determined to trust their son and give me a chance, quite opposite to my parents. They think I'm awesome because his parents don't look at everybody as a dollar sign. That's what your parents do. That's what the boomer does. They don't see you as a person. They don't see you as family. They don't see you as a son or daughter or son-in-law. They see everybody as a dollar sign. It's all a fucking balance sheet. You're either in the red or you're in the black. Okay? Your husband puts them in the red. You put them in the black. And they want to stay in the black. We're grateful to be so close, and I have the opportunity to continue breaking the cycle with our new family. I think I'll wrap it up on this positive note. I'm sure hearing feedback will prompt more later. There's so much I could talk about, but I think I've been able to express what has been heaviest in my heart at this time. Thanks for all that you do, Ollie. Sunshine. Well, it's a very good story, Sunshine. Understand about your parents. First of all, if I had to put money on it, your father's on the down low. Your father probably is gay. This is why he has so much hostility towards women, and he backs down on men. It just, the hoarding, the how he lives his life, the how he interacts, it all checks the boxes that this is a borderline male on the down low. But besides that, your family, your mother and father, your boomer mother and father see everybody as a dollar sign. Everybody is an investment. This is why they don't want you, they don't want you, they don't want your sister getting married. Because they're just dividing up the pie more, and they just see it as less for them. Because the boomer believes all your assets belong to them. They're entitled to whatever you own. Your money, your bank accounts, your home, your emotions, it doesn't matter. Your pets, your dog, it doesn't matter. Your vehicles, your time, it all belongs to them. And they don't want to share it with anybody. So, I hope that helps. Thank you so much, Sunshine, for your contribution and story. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, something you'd like to expose, you'd like to set up a Skype, a phone call, have a private video made, you'd like to sponsor a video like this for someone who needs help and can't afford it, or just make a contribution to the channel in general to keep it supported, growing, and successful. Because this channel survives 100% on contributions from all of you. Without you guys, all of this goes away. So if you like what you see here and you want to see more videos like this, you know what to do with the Cash App, Zelle, PayPal, and email links in the description box below. Also, please like and share this video wherever you can. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and be sure to click the subscription bell to be notified of all my video uploads. Also, be sure to subscribe to both my channels on Rumble. Follow me on Twitter and Telegram as well. I'm Ollie Matthews. This has been Societal Narcissism. Take care, everyone.